All right, so we're going to begin this session just like we do every other session, right? Begin with Efferoche and stroking technique. So I'm just palpating, introducing touch, see what I feel, making note of any areas of tension, because now that we've made it through all of the individual techniques, we're really going to try and relax as well as focus on a specific area that needs to be done. I feel as I'm gentle that there's a little bit of extra tension here, right? There's more tension on the left side than on the right. But otherwise, I feel pretty even. All in all, the tone is okay. All right, so you can spend a couple minutes doing that, but really I don't spend much longer than I just did, right? Less than a minute, maybe 30 seconds. So we tuck into the waistline. We go underneath the hips, good. Just relax, and then pull this down. Just make sure everything's nice and tucked right where we want it. Now, how are you? Comfortable? Yeah? Okay. So of course, if we had a bolster, we'd adjust the bolster, make sure the headrest is good. And as I begin, I'm going to keep doing those stroking techniques. And you can start with skin rolling, but remember, the only reason I'm telling you to start with skin rolling is because you practice this on skin without oil. When it comes to when you're in clinic, you don't have to do this. It's not necessary. You might want to include it in your routine. And the only reason I'm telling you to do this is just so you can practice. So I'll do a couple strokes up the back, nice and easy and gentle, right? If it's painful, we're not trying to do any deep therapy, so we'll just back off the pressure a little bit, right? We just work our way up the back. Now, practically speaking, I would walk around to the other side and do the same thing, but I'm going to focus just on this side for the sake of the demonstration. Okay? So you can do skin rolling once, twice, 5 times. It's up to you, right? You decide what you would like. And once I'm through skin rolling, I'm going to now apply lotion or oil. This is the one I'm using. Okay? So I'll just take a little bit, apply it on my hand. Now that's probably too much, right? But we'll see. Yeah, it's going to be too much. So I'll just wipe it onto the sheets afterwards. Wipe the extra off, good. Always start with less than you think you need, and if you do get too much, no problem. You just wipe it off on a towel or on the sheets or something like that. So this is Efferoche, and the idea behind Efferoche, as we know, is just to spread the oil, and I'm starting to apply a little bit more pressure. Notice I'm not really paying attention to it in any specific direction, right? I'm going across the muscles, I'm going with them, going across the spine. And little by little, I'm going to start shifting my emphasis. I'm just going to tuck this a little bit more. I'm going to start to shift my emphasis to the side that I want to work on. Now, I'm also beginning to plan out my treatment, right? During this demonstration, you guys will be practicing just the back, but I'm starting to think, okay, I've got an hour with this person. I need to work on the back, the neck, the arms, the legs. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Or maybe they've come in and said, I want an hour on my back. So I'm starting to think about my treatment plan. The way I like to separate the back is I will do my Efferoche and then move into my Petrissage techniques. And I'll work on both sides evenly, right? A couple of strips on this side, maybe a couple of strips on that side. I'll do some on both sides. And then once I start to get into deeper techniques, I'm going to focus on just one side at a time. And I'll do stripping on this side. And then I'm going to separate the back into 6 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't care how you do it. You can even go 1, 2. It doesn't matter. Just keep track of different regions because you do want to focus on specific areas. Remember, general, specific, general. So now focusing just on this right side, I'm going to gradually start to increase my pressure. So and as I do so, I'm paying attention to my body mechanics, right? Legs are appropriate, my shoulders aren't up near my ears. I'm not using too much shoulder movement.
Yep,
All of it's coming from my body. If I want more pressure, I lift my body up more directly over top. I'm following through with those strokes, right? Going all the way into the upper traps. I'm not just Nice and slow follow through. Now I could come around to the other side and do the same thing, right? But what I'll do instead is I'm going to come to the head of the table here. I'll stand like this and go on both sides. Shift your hair out of the way a little bit. Good. I'll stand up nice and tall, paying attention to where my hips are. I don't want to get too close. Using my fenner muscles, right? These fenner muscles. That's going to be on either side on the erectors. And I'll go down, fingers up. I don't want to go underneath those sheets. Up, and get the upper traps, into the neck. A little bit of traction. And then back down. Fenner muscles. Back up. Into the shoulders. Back into the neck. And back down. Now I'm using my fenner muscles, but I could also use my fingertips if I would like. Or I could use a loose fist. I will not use my thumbs. I don't want to see that. That'll hurt your thumbs. So. And always remember, we do not go underneath the sheets with our hand. We stay above the sheets. Come up. Another stroke you could do many times. It feels good, and you can increase the depth until it's not comfortable. And as soon as you find it's no longer comfortable for you to increase the depth, you'll shift to the side of the table again, right? So I'll shift over to this side. But maybe I want to go a little bit deeper this time, right? And I'm finding that it's hard on my body. I can't hold the sustained pressure. Well, no problem. I just drop down on my forearm. Now, as you work on your forearm, I want you to focus on keeping your shoulder nice and strong and stable, your arm in line with your back. Do not immediately rotate. You'll hurt your shoulder, right? You doing okay? Yeah. So if it hurts, tell me. Okay? I'll follow through the stroke and I'll pull back nice and easy. If I want more pressure, we know I just bend my arm. Now a trick that you can use is you can use this hand to create a wedge. So this hand isn't stabilizing so much as it's controlling how flexed my arm is. As I bring this hand closer to my elbow, it forces my hand into or my elbow into a flexed position. So if I want only a little bit of flexion, I'll just do this because it will hold my elbow in that position. I don't have to consciously flex my arm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. And we gradually increase that depth, right? So far all we've done is muscle stripping. But now I'm going to transition my techniques. Actually, one more thing I could do, I guess, as I follow through, I can do grasping, right? So I can grasp on this side, or I can reach across and grasp on that side, right? So your muscle stripping can turn into a technique. I don't want you to think that it's just muscle stripping and then just grasping and then just ringing. So we could do, say, muscle stripping, and finish off with some grasping, back in the muscle. You see what I mean? You can mix them. So I'm going to focus now on the low back. So as I do so, I'm going to shift my body position, maybe do some ringing as I move down into the low back. These sheets are coming loose. Okay, that's okay. You can relax now. Tuck them again. Always be mindful of that. If your sheets do come loose, take the time to tighten them up. So focusing on the low back now. So in each section, I'm going to do the same thing I just did. So we'll start with some muscle stripping, just going back and forth. And since I'm using light pressure, I can stand facing the table. If I want some deeper pressure, now I'm just going to focus on this one area. You're okay? Good. And I'm not going to follow all the way up the back because I'm really trying to just be specific to this low back. And what I'm paying attention to now is if I feel a trigger point. I haven't talked about trigger points, so today's the day where we're going to begin introducing this idea. So when I find a trigger point, and what it feels like is just something different. It feels firm or it feels hard, right? It just feels like something different. And I feel one here. And if you can't feel it with the palm of your hand, no problem. Just shift into a kneading technique, right? As I knead, I feel there's a trigger point there. How does that feel? Is that tender?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once I've found a trigger point, I'm going to center myself directly in front of it. And all I do with trigger points is I just press and release. But we need communication. So as I press on this point, If it gets to a 7, I want you to tell me, okay? Now, 7 out of 10, 10 being excruciating pain. Never let it get above 7, all right? So I'll show you different contact surfaces. 1, you could just use the tips of your fingers, right? Stand up nice and straight. And I'll reinforce my fingers with my hand, and I can lean in. How's that feel? Okay? Okay, I'm going to shift my position a little bit. How's that now? That's 7? Yeah. So tell me when it gets down to 4, please. And we just hold it until it goes to 4. How's that? Yeah?
I feel the same.
Same? Okay. That's fine. That's fine if you feel the same. Sometimes trigger points take time, right? So if she feels the same after 30 seconds or so, my hands are getting tired, right? I'll just take a break and I'll just do some kneading. And maybe I can't do that, right? Because maybe your fingers don't have the same strength. That's okay. You don't have to use your fingers. There's other contact surfaces we can use. One that we might be able to use is maybe I'll just put my thumb down and I'll push my hand into my thumb.
What about elbow?
Yeah, we'll get to that one next. Right? The same thing. So we push into it until we get to that 7. We're not quite on the spot. How's that?
7.
7, yeah. And tell me when we're down to a 4. So all of the pressure is coming from my left hand. I'm not using any pressure in my right. Right? So you see as my thumb is there, I'm not pushing in with my thumb at all. It's totally relaxed. All of the pressure comes from this hand on it. But maybe that's not comfortable. Fine. We'll use our elbow. So what I'll do, elbows are hard. Now we're going to shift the way that our body mechanics goes. I want you to really lean into the table, right? So I'm really leaning in. We'll get that elbow in the proper position. It's harder to feel the trigger point though. And I'm going to bend that elbow. How's that doing? Okay?
Yeah.
Is that too much?
A little bit.
Okay. How's that now?
Good.
Good. So now in this position, I'm not using much effort at all. If I need to, I just push with my legs and my core and I can apply more pressure, but I don't need to. And then we need, now of course we're doing relaxation, right? So if you find a trigger point, start to consider it today. You don't have to focus on it too much. But now you understand the basics. Find a trigger point, press on it until it goes to 7, and until it's down to 4, and then do some kneading. But what's important to note about trigger points is when we press on a trigger point, her nervous system gets excited. Our goal is to relax her nervous system. We want everything to be relaxing. So every time I press on a trigger point, our nervous system gets stimulated, and then I have to relax it again. Since our primary goal is to relax her, I would be very selective with my trigger points during relaxation massage. All right, so still on that low back, right? I've done my muscle stripping, a little bit of kneading. And I can go back and forth between that technique, move to the other side. So that could take a few minutes working on just the middle of the back, or the low back. And as we move into that mid back, we're going to start being mindful of our individual muscles. We've got longissimus going directly up the back, a little bit to the side of the spine. Right beside the spine, we have spinalis. And then more lateral, we have iliocostalis. We can focus on each one individually. But what I like to do in this mid back is I'll just do deeper and deeper strips. And then I'll go into that elbow. And notice I am only working on that area. I'm not following all the way through right now. You might find a trigger point. If so, you could do the same things, right? Use your fingers. You could put a thumb down. You could use an elbow. You can use a tool if you're used to them. And I would walk around the table, but I'll stay here. We can work across the body too, right? I can move across those muscles. Is that feeling okay?
Yeah.
So just using my fingertips, I could use my hands as well. It's a little bit like ringing, but I'm using a bit more pressure. kneading, just on one area. And into stripping again. And then maybe because I've done a fair bit of work here, maybe I'll just switch into that top of the table technique again, right? Do one or two of these. And this is not what I want you to do necessarily. I don't want you to follow this exact idea. I want you to be aware of the fact that you can switch your techniques. If you feel like you've worked too hard and too long in one area, just take a break. So maybe I'll do a few of those. And now I'm thinking I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on this upper back, right? So I'm focusing more specifically on that upper back between those shoulder blades, and I can move down, right? Any of those techniques I can move superior to inferior. Move up. Going into those upper traps again. Using my elbow. I'm doing a grasping technique. You're okay? So there is oftentimes a trigger point in those upper traps, right? So if I find it, I can squeeze until I get to that 7. Okay? Or if that doesn't work, one thing I could do is I could reach across the body. So as I reach across, one hand over the other, and note my body mechanics. I'm leaning back with my whole body. You okay? Yeah, too much? It's okay. Two hands, one reinforced over the other. Be mindful of hair. If you feel hair, just gently move it out of the way so you don't pull hair. Now, I'm still focusing on this area, so I would have gone around the body to work on this, but just so I don't go back and forth, right? Okay. Maybe I'll go back to the head of the table. You see the idea here, right? It's I'm going to work on the whole area, being very general, being superficial, and then I'll pick a specific area and focus on that. And then I'll go back to general, or maybe I'll do the whole back, and then I'll pick another specific area, and then general, and then specific. So nothing changes about how you go about it. Okay? And little by little, I lighten up my pressure.
Ideally, you want to do both sides at the same time, one side and move around.
Hey, that's up to you, right? You could do 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, or you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Totally up to you.
Okay.
What I tend to do is I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how I tend to go, because then I'm moving around less. So I'll work here,
I see.
and then I'll come to the top, and I'll do one of these. And I'll move over to this side.
Yes, sir.
And then once I've done this, I'll move up to the top, do one of these,
Oh, yeah.
and then maybe I'll work on this mid back. And then once I've done that, you'll never guess what I do. I move back to the top of the table and do one of these. And then I come to this side. And then the same thing. Up here. Those and up here. And I just gradually, little by little, work up the back.
Just want to have a good practice, a good attitude, just stick with one system.
Yeah, and the nice thing is when you do stick to the same system, you can improve on that system. But if you change it every single time, then you can't. Now, there's something to be said about the fact that it can get boring when you do the same routine over and over again. But the reality of it is, if you are focused on what you are doing and trying to improve, it's super engaging. There's so much you learn when you do the same thing over and over and over again, right? It's like learning an instrument. You'll play the same song until you can play it in your sleep. All right. So we'll lighten up. Sheets. Finish off with our stroking techniques again.
No.
Maybe do some
Tapping.
Chopping.
chopping.
Hacking.
All right. If you want, you don't have to finish with that by any means. And that's it.
Eat.
Good.